Hi, and welcome to Phoenix Vision. I am here with Keef Wesolowski-MIles, who is the co-founder of Awakening the Wild. He is a movement medicine specialist and a somatic shamanic soul coach. So, Keef, welcome to the podcast, mate. It's a real pleasure having you on.
Hey, Jez, so good to be with you, brother. It's amazing to kind of step into this space with you, and I'm so thrilled and honored to be invited. I'm looking forward to diving deep with you, my friend.
Oh man, mate, it's a real pleasure to have you on. Like just like I was saying just before we started, it's just like, man, what you do is so interesting. And in the short time that I've known you, it's been like, yeah, like we it feels like we've already covered some really deep territory. Like really, and I would love to open up a bit on that as we go through. But yeah, like I guess I'd just like love to kick off and just find out like a little bit more about you, buddy. Like, so would love to hear the story of your journey in life, and into movement medicine and facilitating others healing. Because
Mm.
like through talking to you, I've thought a couple of times this guy's got an interesting story. So yeah, like yeah, what's the story, Mon and Glory, brother?
Yeah, oh, thank you, man. Yeah, story of life. Well, there's a few books in there. I'm not sure we've got time to cover it all, but yeah, so so a brief kind of history that led me into the place I'm in now and my journey of healing, or rather holding, and being in the place of holding the space for healing and holding for others has been quite a wild one. I went from being an A grade student, and a track athlete, a county champion, um, you know, very focused and in the flow in my teens. And then at a certain point in my late teens, turning into my 20s, I made a choice to step away from athletics. I had the potential to have been a white Mo Farah. And I split second made the choice. Basically, I decided it was my last year to qualify for the English Championships, in 800 meters, and I missed the qualifying time by a tenth of a second. Yeah, but I'd made it was a sliding door moment, and I'd made that decision. If I qualified, I would commit and aim to run for England, and if I didn't, then I was going to join my friends who were out there drinking, smoking, chasing women. So tenth of a second meant I went down that route. Yeah, went down that route, and it was, I kind of deluded myself. I was a reincarnation of Jim Morrison for a while. At that point, 27 was still a way away, but as I got closer to 27 and the pendulum swing of my excessive hedonistic, wild journeys, where I decided to unscrew my brain and kick it out through the solar system and see what happened, um, started to realize that maybe there was a need to recalibrate my path. So, I had a wild time in my 20s, but it was kind of bipolar in many ways, not diagnosed as bipolar, but I certainly had that kind of manic depressive swing going on, largely exacerbated by, drug and alcohol, and, that kind of wild party living, which I've no regrets for, but it took me from a place of, the student most likely to succeed in whatever he chose to do, both on track and academically, to a very lost little boy, and beneath the surface was a deep insecurity and vulnerability, which I guess was really exacerbated by my, what became addictive behaviors. And I was very blessed to dance very deeply with, many, many beautiful women, and to go to many incredible parties and to travel a lot. But underneath it, I was this kind of super sensitive kid who essentially struggled to be here, wasn't sure how to get traction. Right from an early age, I had this sense of, I don't want to be part of this culture, this world that I'm in. And so yeah, it was a challenging time. And looking back at it now, I'm in my 50th year now. I'll be 50 in a couple of months' time. I'm going through a recapitulation phase, because there's gold buried in those days. And there's also a lot of challenge to face in that place. And it was almost like I deconstructed myself and kind of stumbled into my 30s, miraculously still relatively sane and alive, and and had my freedom. But it was at that breaking point. I'd say I had 3 mini breakdowns in my 20s. And looking back, it was grace of some mysterious choreography that enabled me to meet and find the right teachers at the right time. It's kind of precious times and necessary to have gone through that journey in order to then discover initially yoga, body work, various forms of dance practices. I kind of let go of my, excessive behaviors, and started a healing journey from that point. And it was around that time that I discovered Suzanne and Yakov Danin-Khan, who are the founders of movement medicine. And that started getting off a 20-year journey apprenticing and training with them, which ultimately led to me meeting Shaman Alba Maria, incredible Brazilian shaman and psychologist, and many other teachers that essentially a decade of deep journeying and deep healing that reached places in my being that I'd only just touched on in glimpses through various out there experiences, and found ways to incarnate, to come into the body, to land, to regulate my nervous system, and to find a sense of belonging and purpose and being. So, without going into all of the details of that, it essentially led me to a place of no choice. I'd been so blessed and supported and guided by human teachers, plant teachers, nature as the primary teacher, and the recognition that my true nature is nature, our true nature is nature, that I have a deeply felt sense that there's an imperative there to be able to share the blessings and the wisdom and the guidance that I've been given, and to open up those spaces and to essentially place it on the table between us, to offer the tools, the medicine, the possibility that has worked for me, and to invite others to explore the same. So that's a high-speed edited kind of highlights there, but at some point I'll write the book, so a little snippet, and you can dive into the full story at another point.
Nice. Yeah, mate. Listening to your story, there's a lot of parallels. I've got a similar story, in terms of late teens, early 20s, being involved with certain things, and kind of finding a different path through, ultimately going to a very, very difficult spot. A very, very difficult thing happen, and this kind of was a massive course correct. And what kind of comes up is, I'm thinking that I think a lot of people turn to kind of like drugs and alcohol and the party scene, and they're looking for medicine, and maybe also finding some medicine there. It's not to completely discard these things, because like yourself, I have no regrets of it either, because of the learning experience and the formative experience that it would have been for both of us. And I think there's so many people within that space coming from challenging backgrounds that are looking for the medicine in these spaces, but fortunately through maybe lack of knowledge or lack of life experience, or maybe not knowing that there's other ways, people end up getting into this space whereby it feels good to start with, but then 10 years down the line it's really not. And I'm so thankful that I was able to break out of that at the time I was, and it sounds like you did as well. So and then I'm seeing the parallel with okay, well, that medicine didn't work, so it's where's the other medicine? It's kind of like, I guess, what was your thoughts be on the theory that I'm just percolating with, that we're all looking for medicine somewhere?
Sure, that's a really good question, and medicine's a really interesting word, and maybe we can unpack that a little bit as we move forwards. But I'd also say, to extrapolate what you're saying there, Jess, I would say that certainly for me, and my sense is it's true for many other people, if not every other person, is that I was crying out for some kind of rite of passage, some kind of initiation. There was a call for belonging, for community, but also for meaning. What I've come to learn is essentially as human beings, we're storytelling beings. Yeah. We're relational beings. A core need for us as humans is to be able to belong, to be able to feel safe enough, to be able to feel valued enough, to be able to have the support and the guidance to be able to move through stages of development. Yeah. And unfortunately, it seems to be the case that certainly in the West, in contemporary society, one of my favorite teachers, Bill Plotkin, talks about how actually, yes, it is heartbreaking, the lack of elders. Yeah. But actually, what is even more heartbreaking is the lack of mature adults, because you can't have elders without mature adults. And without mature adults, there's nobody to guide and initiate and support adolescence. Yeah. So there's this sense that actually, collectively, a high percentage of which by its very nature is have the world run by adolescents. Yeah. And we're lacking that guidance and support. So this sense of medicine is an interesting word, and certainly within a certain kind of bubble and community, we know what we're talking about with medicine. I'd say there's a crossover there, because there's a redefinition, a reclaiming of the word medicine not being about hospitals and pharmaceuticals and paracetamol, but medicine may refer to plant medicines, for example. But arguably, anything could be a medicine, anything could be a poison, anything could be a medicine in the right dose, in the right context. Yeah, appropriate use. Community is medicine. Creativity is medicine. Movement is medicine. The breath is medicine. So I would say anything that is life enhancing, that is inspiring, that stimulates our creativity and our potential to grow and to be of service to life. Nature is medicine. Yeah. So this sense of medicine as an umbrella term for what is beautiful, what is essential in our capacity to be fulfilled and to recognize our interconnection and to unapologetically be who we are. And it's different for different people at different times in their life, depending on our journeys, where we are, that different medicines are appropriate at different times. But I'd say the core of it is community and the need for belonging and meaning, hence storytelling human beings. Many shamanic cultures talk about the warrior's choice, and the warrior's choice is to choose a story or a collection of stories that seem to be more or less life affirming, that create resilience and purpose and meaning, and to commit to that story or those stories 100%, until such a point that they prove to be less useful and maybe others come in. But also ultimately knowing that it's a mystery, that we don't know, that it's a story. Yeah. I like to say my story, your story, his story, her story, but ultimately it's a great mystery. Yeah. And so for me, stories are also medicine, and it's really interesting to look at what stories we tell about ourselves, about each other, about the world, and to recognize, is this life enhancing? Are these stories life enhancing, or are they taking us down a portal or a spiral that, of negativity and destruction? Personally, I know which stories I would choose. The starting point is to recognize what stories are impacting our lives.
Mm. That's so powerful, man. Like really powerful, and like it's really striking me as you're speaking. I'm thinking back to like the dawn of time, of our human consciousness, and it is stories of how we communicated, stories of how we related with the world. And I'm always struck by how, you know, we can see ourselves in all of the archetypal stories, and you know it brings up the concept of the myth. And like they say that a myth is something that never happened, but that is always happening all of the
Mm-hmm.
time. And it is just so interesting how, you know, you can find stories in anywhere that you go, and you know you sit on a bench in a park and you're going to witness a whole series of beautiful stories that can be teach you so much about life, teach you so much about the nature of yourself, so much about the nature of others. And I think a lot of people are don't realize that they have the power to actually rewrite their story if they're recognizing that it isn't working for them, or even realize that they're in a great story as it is. And you know, I love that word, you know, story. It kind of brings this like it's kind of like the childlike innocence to it, and which is, you know, our life. We are just children, really, in this beautiful mystery.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And again, that's another story, right? So yeah, stories about stories about stories. You know, it's a bit like that kind of fractal kind of reality. Yeah. There's stories within stories within stories. So, you know.
Never ending stories. So, um, I'd love to segue into like a really beautiful description of medicine, mate. I'm like, yeah, just inspired listening to you describe. I think that's a really lovely segue into movement medicine. So, please, like, what can you give me an overview of what movement medicine is, as well as like, you know, I know you've got a lot of offerings and like a lot of things happening to the benefit of many people. I'd love to hear movement medicine is for, and who say your offerings are for.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thank you, Jess. It's yeah, you get me starting on these conversations. We could be here for hours, which is great. You know, I'm happy to do that. So yeah, I mean, the starting point for me is I really want to kind of bow with massive respect to Susanna and Yakov Darning-Khan. Susanna and Yakov have been my teachers for getting on for 20 years now, and they're the founders of the School of Movement Medicine. And essentially, it's for me, it's been one of the, if not the core medicines again, that have enabled me to go through a path not just of healing but of holding and becoming more and more unapologetically who I am. Yeah, so in many ways it does what it says on the tin. Yeah, movement is the medicine. And I'd say at its essence, you know, you could talk about the various lineages that feed into it. So it's got deep shamanic roots. Yeah. Visions coming through in the Amazon rainforest. It's got roots into Gestalt therapy, constellation work, devotional practices, neurobiological, contemporary scientific wisdom. Yeah, it's also dance. And the essence of it is a recognition that everything from the most microscopic, the smallest you can go, to the most cosmic, out there, universal way of seeing, everything is in movement all the time. There's always rhythm. There's always vibration. There's always pulsation. You know, even the most apparently solid thing like a rock or a mountain, it's vibrating. There's movement there. Yeah. So there's this sense that everything is already dancing. Yeah. So there's an invitation there to if I'm already in movement, if I'm already dancing, I may as well participate in that process. I may as well bring my awareness to that, my consciousness to that. More and more I recognize that not only are we not human doings, we're not even human beings. I would say we're human processes or human dancings. Yeah. That we're constantly in movement, constantly in change, constantly in process. And the essence of movement medicine really is by using embodiment practices, by exploring ways of going deeper and deeper into the skin, muscle, bone, into the organs, into our cells, that actually through that engagement and with the thread of the breath, there's the possibility of shining the light of awareness on our psyche. Yeah. So that we start to have an understanding of what is moving and apparently not moving within our psyche, regarding stories again, regarding our perceptions of the world, and the possibility for change. Change is inevitable, but we can participate in that, and it's a bit like like the surfer can't control the ocean. Yeah. But she can become more skillful at reading the ocean, at responding, about learning how to balance and choose the moment to ride the wave. Yeah. So there's a co-creation, there's a possibility of meeting life on its own terms. So I'd say movement medicine, it's a vast map. There's a huge amount of material there. On a very simple level, it's about bringing awareness and consciousness to the body, bringing awareness and consciousness to the breath. Yeah, bringing awareness and consciousness to how the mind operates, not just on a linear, rational, analytical level, but also on a deep, dreaming, mythopoetical level. Yeah. And to explore ways about how these various aspects of ourselves interweave, and you can approach each separately, but that separation is kind of an illusion because, where is the separation? Where does the body and the emotions and the mind, where does soul, spirit, where's the space between you and me? At what point do I stop and do you begin? So it's a sense of bringing awareness, bringing acknowledgement, bringing acceptance of where we are. Yeah. And from that place, opening up the possibility of choice, to make steps, to make change, to engage with what is, and to plant seeds for new possibilities. Yeah. So that's maybe a slightly abstract way of approaching it, but on a very simple level, when you pose this question initially, Jess, who's movement medicine for? My heart says it's for everybody, and I'm also a strong believer that it's kind of horses for courses. It's the right thing for the right person at the right time. Yeah. And what's good medicine for me right now might not necessarily be the right thing for you right now. So I would say movement medicine really is, yes, it's for everybody, but I'd also say it's for the individual who recognizes that there is more latent potential within their system, within their soma, within their psyche, within their heart, their soul, that is perhaps untapped, that there's a possibility of going much deeper, of reaching much more meaning, fulfillment, belonging, and a sense of deep spiritual connectedness and purpose in their lives. Yeah. Because it's almost like there's a soul calling, to go beyond the mundane, particularly for people who get a sense that what they're seeing out there in the world, in society, maybe in their families, in mass media, in culture, that there's an illusion there, there's some kind of masking, that there's actually something of much more substance. Yeah. So in that sense, it's really for those who find themselves and perhaps they're stumbling along the path, but they recognize that there's a path that they could choose to go much deeper and really find their creativity and their potential to really engage and to give their fullest. Equally, it's for those who are carrying a lot of trauma, who are carrying a lot of challenging experiences and have had enough and are actually at a point where, you know, I'm ready to move through this now. I'm ready to let go of it now, and maybe not knowing how or where and in what way to approach that. You know, it seems to me that the golden key with all of this is the body. Yeah. And so by coming more into the body, you know, a friend of mine once said to me about 20 years ago, he said, you know, the phrase, you know, running around like a headless chicken. And he came out with gold. He said, actually, the reality is, if you look around, most people are running around like chickenless heads. Yeah. Chickenless, right? It's like how we've been kind of conditioned to be very head orientated in the mind. Yeah. We kind of cut off and that disconnect from the body and the heart, and let alone any concept of soul, is interesting. And it's not to make the mind wrong, but it's not the whole picture. Yeah. And so movement medicine really opens up portals of starting to weave all of those threads together.
Oh, so sorry, mate. Cut out. You're in the middle of a really juicy flow as well. So
That's right. Life has a great way of doing that. You know, once I get too carried away, it's always an invitation to pause and breathe. So I trust that.
yeah. So, mate, this actually like moves quite nicely into my next question, and you know, the more and more people I work with, the more and more I see that the more and more simple it becomes in terms of what's creating people's issues and challenges, and it always links back to some sort of disconnection.
Yes.
Always, every single time, whether it's some sort of disconnection between how someone is moving, or yeah, a disconnection between head and heart, or a disconnection with others, or a disconnection with God, the spirit. Like it always is rooting back to some sort of lack of connection. And you know, like trauma is something that can cause us to massively disconnect and massively disassociate, depending on trauma, because the person, you know, may kind of check out of the body as a means to not feel the very challenging environment that is created within the body due to trauma.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you if you could share some understanding on the psychosomatic connection between the mind, body, and trauma, and how we can access and heal trauma through movement.
Sure. I mean, that's a great question, and it's a complex question, I would say. And, you know, I'd like to kind of, you know, I'm all about authenticity and transparency. And whilst my work, movement medicine, and many of the practices I bring in are certainly trauma informed and certainly seem to have very powerful, useful, and effective ways of navigating trauma in the system. I'd like to place it on the table. I don't claim to be a trauma expert. Okay. So that's really important. I also think that trauma is quite a charged word and can often be misunderstood. So I guess I'd like to approach it in this way, Jess. It's what I recognize, what's recognized within movement medicine, what's recognized in many of the practices that I work with through Awakening the Wild, is that we're a complex being. We've already touched on that: body, heart, mind, and so much more. Yeah. So any traumatic experience, for want of a better phrase, that we've been through has an impact on every level of our being. Yeah. So on our psychology, in our mind, it literally changes the shape of our brain. Yeah. Our nervous system. It has an impact on our body. Memories are held in the muscles, in the cells. You know, we're mostly water. We're mostly water. Water holds memory. Yeah. So the mind, the psyche, the body, the our emotional being holds memories. Yeah. So whatever we choose to have as our definition of trauma, the reality is at the core of that is our central nervous system. Yeah. And there's ways of approaching this body, this heart, this mind that can enable us to create enough safety. And I think enough is a key word here. Enough safety, enough of a sense of belonging, enough self-regulation and co-regulation to be able to find ourselves in a place where we can reassure our psyche, our heart, our body, that it's safe enough for us to explore alternative pathways. Yeah. And so I'd say that's the starting point. And so the more we bring our awareness into our body, you know, and find our own pace, our own rhythm. Yeah. There's a beautiful saying that Yakov is one of the founders of movement medicine often says is, if you can move with it, you can meet it. If you can breathe with it, you can meet it. If you can't, as in you start to collapse, you start to seize up, you start to hyperventilate or dissociate in some way, that normally means you're pushing too hard or you're just not ready. There's not enough resourcing there on the table. Yeah. So that's really the key. And that's where this movement practice can be really supportive for anybody that's coming with a whole complex of different stories, whether or not you label that trauma, whether or not you label it along any kind of neurodiverse spectrum. Yeah. It's about creating enough safety, enough presence, enough acceptance of the condition that we're in, find ourselves in, body, heart, mind, to be able to resource ourselves enough to then take the steps to find different stories. One of the things we work with in movement medicine, we call incantations. And an incantation is a combination of three things. It's an affirmative I statement, yeah, that is simple and repeatable. Yeah, it's a repeatable movement. Yeah, you bring movement in. You know, I think it's there's a particular tribe, I think it's from Papua New Guinea, you know, forgive me if that's correct, maybe others know differently, pretty sure it's Papua New Guinea. The knowledge is just an idea until it's in the muscles. Yeah, so there's something about coming into the muscles, the bones, the skin, bringing that in with words, and then imbuing it with feeling, that we can start to create new pathways in our life, but also new pathways in our nervous system, in our brain. Yeah. And we can start to untangle the narratives, the stories, but also the held on to memories, the stored hormones, chemicals in our system, the neural pathways and what's stored in the muscles, in the blood, in the water of our body, so that can start to be cleansed and cleared in order to then open up new pathways. Yeah. So the beautiful thing with a practice like movement medicine is the invitation is to really go at your own pace, to find your own rhythm. And that's my role, and the role of other teachers and guides is to support people in that, you know, and to help them regulate and find their own rhythm. Yeah. And to be okay with taking 2 steps forwards, 2 steps back, stepping to the side, moving around, and not pushing. So in one sense, taking your foot off the accelerator, but also taking your foot off the brake. Yeah. I've experienced in myself, and I've witnessed in many, many other people, the transformation that can happen by coming into this, the basic foundational resourcing of being in the body, moving with what is, having an awareness of what's operating, what's happening in my body, my emotions, the stories I tell about myself and the world. And from that place, the capacity to start making new choices. And, and those choices are most wisely approached when we think in terms of baby steps, one step at a time, many baby steps and the occasional quantum leap. Yeah. And by taking those baby steps, we can start to bring peace to any traumatic experiences that we hold in our system. Yeah. And we can start to open up new pathways that lead to more liberation, more wholeness, more health on every level of our being. So yeah, I would say, without again writing a book about it, that's probably some headlines for now that I'd be happy to unpack further at some point.
Yeah. What was coming up as you're speaking was just the amazement in what is in us, like locked in those tissues. I was thinking, because sometimes I'll stretch or I'll dance or I'll move in a specific way, and the movement will trigger a memory from when I was a kid, and not necessarily something traumatic, but like it will just be some random memory of when I was like going down a slide or something. It will come in as a flash, and it's just like, whoa, I've just triggered this memory by stretching my chest. Yeah. It's just like, wow, what's going on here? It leads on to some really interesting questions around how the body and the nervous system works, and because I think the Western scientific way of looking at things is like everything's in the mind and everything's contained in the brain. When actually, where does consciousness come from? They found that it's just actually non-local to the brain, and then it's just like, hang on, if the brain is where everything is stored, then how does this explain our instantaneous reactions that are just within the system, or how does that explain how I can stretch or I can dance in a specific way, and that will trigger something. It's just amazing what we've got here in this human dancer. And yeah, so I'm just wondering, like, some really interesting around the holding of the space for some really difficult things to come through, and what that is like for a participant, as well as what that's like for you being the host of that, and kind of like how do you manage this kind of like when there may be an opening or maybe a release, and the person may be in like a quite a deep vulnerable place, for example, like how's the space held, mate?
Yeah, so sure, so maybe I'll come in it from an angle here and kind of flesh out a little bit some of the context you asked me earlier about the sort of things we offer. Yeah, so it's really contextual. So the other threads that come into the Awakening the Wild work that myself and my wife Aluna work with also comes from a particular shamanic lineage in Brazil, through the Terra Marim Foundation. And so we work with things like Vision Quest and sweat lodges. In our tradition, they're called Cabana. Many other different shamanic dynamics. We work with singing, with chants, with song, with drumming, deep journeys. We also do things like burial ceremonies. We have a whole program called Dancing with Death, where we're inviting death as a benevolent friend, as a way of more fully saying yes to life. Yeah. So there's many more deep processes. And I would also say that there's a difference between working with a mixed group, yeah, as opposed to a gender specific group. Aluna tends to work a lot with women. I work with men, and then we mix it together. So there's a group context. And then there's also the one-on-one situation, which is also has its own particular flavor and quality to it. Yeah. So I think the key thing really, I mean, my sense is that the right people find the right teacher at the right time. Yeah. The we find the appropriate thing for us, even if it turns out to not be the right thing for us. Yeah. There's a lot being offered out there in the world with the best of intentions, often that by people who are not well trained, who haven't been through deep initiations and apprenticeships themselves, that haven't got the resourcing to be able to fully hold themselves in integrity, let alone hold a group in integrity. So I think it's important to name that it's really important to be discerning about who and how and in what context people dive into these things. I would say I'm blessed. I'm far from perfect. You know, I'm still navigating many different aspects of my being. And, you know, I always say to people, I'm a student of life, wife, and 7-year-old daughter, you know, and if at any point I tried to claim to have transcended my ego and be healed, then feel free to slap me with a wet fish, you know, because that ain't true. You know, I'm a work in process. So I would say how I hold space is by remembering that I am held. Yeah, by leaning into the resources that hold me. Yeah. So the practices that hold me. Yeah. The lineages that hold me. The teachers that hold me. The human and the other than human. Yeah. That I am held by Big Mama, Pachamama. I belong to the earth. I'm held by Big Papa. You could say Taita Inti, Padre Sol, Father Son. I'm held by nature. I'm held by my teachers. When I'm working, I have a, you know, it's busy. At my back, it's busy. There are many beings, yeah, and human beings who have been and currently are in some cases my teachers, and I feel that they're sat on my shoulder, yeah. So the more I let go of the idea that I have to do the holding, yeah, and I sink back into being held, what it requires of me is to be present, yeah, to bring my presence, to be resourced, to be humble, to be curious, to recognize that there's medicine in this process for me. It's not, and to really give back, or to acknowledge, to remind that each individual is responsible for their own journey. You know, it's really about respecting the path of all beings, and that I, as a teacher, as a guide, as a space holder, however you want to frame it, I'm not interested in rescuing people, and I couldn't if I tried. Yeah, I can't possibly know what is right for any one person. Yeah, what I can know is what has worked for me, to know that I'm resourced, to know that I'm held, and to bring that into the space between us, to place it onto the table, and to offer individuals the possibility of picking up and trying different tools, practices, medicines, however you want to frame it, and exploring and being creative with that, and actually reclaiming their own power. Yeah. So when you're holding a space, many things can happen. And my sense is really things will only come up dependent on the integrity of the circle, the strength of the circle. Yeah. And so the stronger the circle, the more powerful can be the openings and the transformations that come up. If the circle isn't held in a way that the container is strong, then things may come up, but then they're not going to be they're not likely to be transformative, and in worst case scenarios, it can, certain situations can completely re-traumatize people, and maybe that's their journey and they needed to step into that and they need to learn about discernment, but for me, there's a duty of care, primarily care of my own circle, care of the circle of the people I'm working with. Yeah. And if that container's there, then whatever comes up emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, it's really about staying present with it and supporting individuals and the group appropriately, depending on the context of what we're working with. Yeah. So I also want to put an aside there that also for me, there's a filtering process about who arrives in the space at what point and in what particular place. Yeah. And for some people, the truth is that, if they're profoundly traumatized, and I'm talking, kind of post-traumatic stress, or they're really struggling with intense psychological challenges, or they're in active addiction, for example, then it may be that the spaces that are being held are not the right place at the right time for them. Yeah. So for me, it's about having the integrity and the humility to be able to recognize my limits, and my skills and my capacities, and to be willing and able to meet, acknowledge, love, appreciate whoever comes, but also to recognize, actually, I recommend you go in that direction, to point people in the pathway where they may get more appropriate support, with what they're dealing with. So I always have a sense that people that step into spaces that I hold, they need to be resourced enough. They need to have enough capacity to take enough responsibility for what goes on for them emotionally, physically, to be able to look after their well-being, at least on a basic primary level. Yeah. Yeah. As a starting point. Yeah. And then to support those within that they find their own pace and their own rhythm, and when necessary, if I have to recommend back off a little bit or give a nudge and go a bit deeper, that's part of the cultivation of the space, and I often find I'm holding a space, and if there's 30 people in the room, I'm teaching 30 different lessons. Yeah. It's the same, but it's many, because each individual is different, and it changes moment to moment. I'm fortunate that there's only been a handful of situations where something really intense and potentially serious has come up. So whether that's chance or whether it's based on the integrity of the spaces that I hold, maybe it's a combination of the two. Yeah. But in certain situations, if things are really serious, then you need to call in the support and practical terms, whatever that may be, depending if it's a psychological issue, a medical issue, a physical issue, it may be that it's necessary to call in the necessary experts to support those individuals, and if it's an emergency, it's an emergency. If you've got to call an ambulance, you call an ambulance, and it may be a process of supporting and guiding to get the right support. So the essence of movement medicine and the essence of the Awakening the Wild offerings is this may well have therapeutic, psychotherapeutic outcomes, but it's not psychotherapy. Yeah. This may well have possibilities emerge that open us up in many different dimensions. Yeah, but there needs to be a care within that, you know. And I think by bringing care and responsibility to a space and cultivating within the space that each individual is taking care and responsibility for themselves, and that there's appropriate boundaries, and there's what's the word I'm looking for? Consent. You know, there needs to be consent, there needs to be permission, there needs to be invitation, there needs to be choice. Yeah. And so within that, by and large, most people are able to take enough responsibility for themselves to take the steps they need to. Yeah. And when that's in the culture of the group, each individual taking enough responsibility for themselves, and also by virtue of that, having a sense of care and responsibility for the rest of the group and respect and permission, then amazing things can happen. That by and large, I would say 99.9% of those situations end up being transformative. It's not always pretty, you know. It's like I'll often say to people I'm working with, I'm really not interested in sugar-coated shit. And we're really not interested in shit-coated sugar either, to be perfectly, you know. Sometimes the only way is through, you know, the only way is through, but potentially approached in the right way, everything can be a gateway to transformation, to healing, to wholeness, to love, actually. You know, grief is a portal to love. Yeah. Anger, fear, you know, the whole spectrum of primary and primal emotions, you know, have the potential to be gateways to creativity, to transformation, to healing, to wholeness, you know, and equally they can be destructive. Yeah. So it's really about cultivating the possibility of responsibility. How do we learn to become more responsive and less reactive? Yeah. How do we learn to breathe, expand, and include? Yeah. Rather than exclude and push away and make wrong. Yeah. So within that, there's a sense of the wholeness can hold all of it, our wounding. There's a sense of the wounded healer that can hold all of it. Yeah. The protective parts of our psyche can be included in our internal community. Yeah. But the more we can come to the center of our own circle, yeah, the more we can have responsibility and integrity, yeah, the more the quality of our relationships are enhanced. Because it loops back to what I was saying before. I strongly believe that at our essence, we are storytelling beings and we are relational beings. Everything is relationship. Yeah. And so the more we're able to take responsibility for what's ours, what's not ours, what are our boundaries, what's our yes, what's our no, yeah, and to recognize the interconnectedness of us all so that reciprocity is there, the possibility for cultivation of wholeness and transformation is limitless, really.
It's beautiful, mate. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Just thinking as you're talking that, so I'm just committed to jumping in with a 6-month container with you, as well as a few other things. And just as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, that's probably the best decision I've made all year. And just like listening to you talk is just, and you know, really feeling your love and your passion and the thought and the care that goes into your work is just really, yeah, it's really inspiring, mate. So yeah, I mean, I would love to talk a little bit about. So I had a session with you, which was like very impactful, and I was very curious because like I've tried a lot of things. I've like moved with a lot of things, and some things were definitely for me, other things weren't so much, and I had like really open curiosity, and was really looking forward to it because I love dancing. Like I really do love dancing, and have, I think, inadvertently scratched the surface of some movement medicine in the past, and just the experience to have been guided in the way that you guided, it was a very special thing, and I was able to reach a certain state of presence, which isn't a usual thing for me. I remember like I was talking afterwards, and it's just there's nothing to say to start with except just like laugh, and yeah, and, I really got this feel for the power of it. And we were only going for half an hour, and just like the effect that it had was extremely profound. So yeah, I'd love to kind of switch gears a little bit and ask a little bit about well, there's two things I want to ask. Like one around if you've got any stories around how movement medicine has personally helped you,
Yeah.
specific stories, and then I'd love to ask a little bit about some of the offerings that you've got, because you've got a really packed and juicy schedule coming up over like the next few months, and I've signed up for all of it. So yeah, like really looking forward to getting stuck in there, mate, and yeah, invest in that that time and energy into this, because it feels like a really worthwhile place to put time and energy. So yeah,
thanks, Jess. And yeah, that fills my heart with joy to know that kind of homeopathic dose that we shared there was had such potency to it, and I really felt the difference at the end of that session as well. Your voice changed. You had a certain kind of glow about you that was like, wow, okay, wow, there's something here. This stuff works. Amazing. Like, yeah, when are you going to get that? Obviously. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I mean, there's several things that I'll speak to, which is the online course and the men's gatherings and a few other things, but I'll come back to that in a second. Just a little note to self to track into it. I would say that many medicines have helped me in my journey of healing and holding and transformation, and becoming more and more unapologetically who I am, and what I keep circling back to is that the primary key medicine for me has been movement medicine. And I suspect that it partly comes from that background of, being a hardcore raver in my late teens, early 20s, and the literal ecstasy of that, and the choice of having to move away from that kind of hedonistic lifestyle. And I recognized, it took me a few years to recognize that actually it was such a revelation when I started to engage with movement medicine deeply. And I dipped into other practices as well, like 5 rhythms, for example, which is one of the roots of movement medicine. Suzanne and Yakov were, leading lights in the 5 rhythms community, and apprenticed with Gabrielle Roth from 5 rhythms for, a couple of decades. So that's one of the roots of movement medicine. But when I discovered movement medicine in particular, having been through a journey of healing and coming back to myself largely through yoga, what I realized that what I missed from my kind of misspent youth, if you like, it actually wasn't the drugs, the altered states that came in. It was the dance, and it was the connection and the community. And it was such a revelation to me to recognize that I could reach the same kind of states of consciousness, that I could go on profound journeys and reach ecstatic states in my being simply by dancing deep and breathing. The breath and water and dance and good music, good fucking tunes, man. It makes a difference. It helps. But to also be able to weave in the whole spectrum, that it doesn't need to be kind of bang, 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 full on techno trance or whatever, which I love, but also, classical music and, world music, indigenous music, that you can ride these waves that that touch places in the heart, that open up landscapes of sadness and sorrow, and of excitement, of curiosity. That, you know, the music, as much as the movement, is the medicine as well, that can open up these possibilities. And so I would say that movement medicine really helped me to harvest the gold of those experiences I'd had in my earlier life. Yeah. But to bring it into deeper embodiment, it's about incarnation. You know, many teachers said to me, and Yakov was amongst them, that that you don't need to practice up and out. Yeah. By nature, I'm very extrovert. By nature, I tend to connect into the cosmic, you know? Yeah. It's not true for everyone. Others are much more introverted, right? I don't need to practice up and out. My life practice is about down and in. Yeah. It's not to the exclusion of the up and out. That's beautiful. But it's learning how to fly with my feet on the ground, how to grow deep roots. That, yes, deep roots, healthy roots, grounded in nature, grounded in the soil of my being, enables the branches that expand out through space, through time, through consciousness, to be inclusive here. Yeah, the up and out thing, fire experiences, great, you know, but that's all they are, unless they're grounded into our being, so that we can function on a day-to-day level. And the beautiful thing about movement medicine, and also the Termarim work in Brazil, is this is about contemporary everyday shamanism. This is about, how do I behave in all of my relationships? You know, how am I when I'm, you know, looking after the kids, when I'm doing the washing up, when I'm digging the garden? You know, it's not about going away and having far out experiences at the weekend and then coming back to your normal life. It's, you know, I remember Alba Maria said to me once, who's the founder of the Terra Marin Foundation in Brazil, and she said to me, either you're in this 100% or you're not. What are you doing? You know, where's the separation between your personal life, your professional life, your spiritual life? It's interwoven. You can't compact. You can try to compartmentalize it, but actually there's no separation there. And one of the gifts of movement medicine for me is that it's enabled me to cultivate acceptance of the complexity of my being. Yeah, to acceptance of both the genius and madness that I have access to cultivate acceptance and inclusion of both the reality that I am incredibly resilient and courageous. I'm alive now. You know, I've lived nearly half a century. You know, there's resilience, there's courage, yeah, to get to that place. But also, I'm incredibly fragile. I'm incredibly vulnerable. Yeah, I have a vast inner community of sub-personalities and parts, you know, and movement medicine's enabled me to cultivate that community and come to the center of that community, you know, and to include all of it. So really it's enabled me to develop self-love, self-respect, self-care, self-resourcing. And from that place, in my experience, one cannot also have love, respect, and care in all of our relationships and all of life, actually. Yeah. So I would say, you know, what has movement medicine helped me with? Movement medicine has helped me choose to be here on this planet. Movement medicine has helped me choose to be in this body, to choose to be in this heart, to choose to be in this mind, to choose to experience this being I find myself experiencing in the time that we find ourselves experiencing life here on planet Earth. Yeah, it's given me the choice, and it's again and again and again at every portal, you know, in that pendulum between the agony and the ecstasy. With that choice, it's invariably an emphatic yes. I say yes to life. Yeah, I say yes to life. And if I'm saying yes to life, I have to say yes to all aspects of my own being. And I have to say yes to all aspects of every other being. Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean, sometimes love isn't pretty. Sometimes fierce compassion is required, it's necessary. It doesn't mean that you condone bad behavior, but to have respect and to honor the path of all beings is fundamental. And if I'm going to honor the path of all beings, I have to honor the path of this being. And I find myself having this curious experience of being both animal, angel, and this strange kind of crazy, beautiful thing that we call being human. So yeah, that's the top card for me. And that's my path, and that's my continuing journey, and I will continue as long as my heart beats in my chest and there's breath in my lungs. Yeah. And who knows, maybe beyond that, but certainly all I know for sure is that I've got this one life, this one precious life to engage with, and to cultivate the possibilities that others can remember that about themselves and find that choice for themselves is really what inspires me moving forwards. It really is. For me, it comes down to love. Love, 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 love until there's nothing else left. Yeah. Love is the greatest medicine, full stop. Yeah. And so that's what I bring into my work. And this online course is really exciting. It's going to be over 6 months. It's called Resource. Yeah. Kind of play on words. I'm a bit of a poet as well, so I like to play with words. So it's R, small e, capital source. So source, resource. Go back to the source, plug into the source, recharge at the source, resource. Kind of like the fact that it's online and it's an online resource, which is kind of an interesting aside that someone pointed out to me. But the beautiful thing with this 6-month journey is that we'll cover all of the foundational material of movement medicine, from the basic resourcing through dancing deeply with the primary emotions to dancing deeply with various roles and archetypes, going into some of the more profound processes. We have one of the processes, the SEER process, for example, systemic essential energy retrieval. It's a contemporary way of looking at soul retrieval in shamanic terms. Phoenix process, more of the same. Getting to know the stories that we tell about ourselves, about life, about our past, about our future, and to take some more responsibility and find more choicefulness about what stories we're telling. Yeah. And how that impacts our life and our relationships and all of life on earth. Actually, it's about growing up. It's about getting up, standing up, living fully. Yeah. So it's a really great journey that will be built incrementally. Yeah. And will peak. So from November through to May, leading to the more intense work at the end, which is utterly transformational. And I just love the structure of it as well, because it's a mixed group. It's going to be men and women. We'll have a weekly session where we dive into the conceptual stuff and into the movement stuff. Yeah, we'll have a monthly gathering of the cohort. I'm calling it a community medicine circle. So essentially a sharing circle, the possibility to be witnessed, to bring our own stories. I'll be offering some one-on-one mentoring where we can dive into specifics for each individual. Do you know what? I would love to engage in this course. So when I was creating it and putting it together, I was like, yeah, I'm on board. Let me go. When does it start? Oh yeah, I've got it. I'm holding it. Yeah. Okay. So maybe I haven't quite found the power to kind of immediately kind of reproduce myself yet. But if I master it before November, then I'm going to split into 2 and be both the teacher and the participant, which I always am. I have to listen carefully to whatever I'm teaching, because the main person that needs to hear it is me. Yeah. And we offer the medicine that we most need, right? So that's amazing, open to men and women. And already there's a beautiful circle forming, and there'll be a few opportunities to come in, dip your toes, and then dive into that commitment. The other piece I'm really excited about is the development of the men's work I've been doing. And Yeah, I'm kind of affectionately calling it medicine movement, with the men part of movement emphasized. So it's a movement of medicine. It's a movement for men. It's a gathering of men coming together, which will lead into ultimately, more in-depth gatherings. We're going to be doing a year-long journey starting next summer, which is medicine movement, shamanic soul journey for men, which will be over many modules over the course of 12 months. But we've created these weekends. I say we because it's myself and various other people I'm collaborating with, called Portals of Possibility. And the idea with Portals of Possibility is to make it super accessible, super affordable, partly to continue to cultivate the existing community. There's already an amazing community of men involved in this work, to give them the possibility to continue to meet on a regular basis, without it costing them the earth, but also by making it really accessible for those that are kind of curious but are maybe not ready to make the full time, energy, financial investment to be able to step in. So it's donation based. It's going to be really affordable. It's in we're in the Brecon Beacons in Wales, so we've got these beautiful cottages we're going to be staying in. There's this amazing land, 11 acres of land, woodland, river running through it. We'll be diving into the sweat lodge. We'll be gathering in circle, sharing. Music will be happening, and we'll also be diving into the fundamental practices of movement medicine. And there's this amazing hall called Langasti, which is in a stunning location where you've got a view of the Brecon Beacons, the Black Mountains, and it overlooks Langhorse Lake. So it's really immersed in nature. And being November, we've got these super cozy cottages where we're going to be able to cook together, eat together, have a laugh together. And whilst there's a serious intention, there's a depth to what we're invoking here. There's also a lot of space to have fun and just connect and hang out and have a laugh. For me, humor and laughter is, that's in my top 5 most potent medicines. It's like if I lose my sense of humor, I know I'm in trouble. So yeah, we have a lot of fun as well. So yeah, I can't wait to get going. And there's some really interesting characters rocking up with real diverse backgrounds. So it's guaranteed to be quite a journey. So yeah, I'm thrilled that you're going to be there for both of those and many more. Maybe Dancing with Death, do a burial ceremony for you, Vision Quest, all sorts of things moving forwards, brother. And really welcome any others to come and join us.
Mate, I'm well up for Dancing with Death. This sounds wild. Yeah, it's right up my alley. Very intense experience by the sounds of it. So yeah, really interested in that. And yeah, I was really drawn to Phoenix Process because our very good mutual friend Ed, who yeah, if you're listening, Ed, big shout out, big love, brother. Big love. Yeah, he shared with me about your Phoenix Process, and I was just like, yeah, what's that? And I'm in. But what is it? It was kind of like that. And then he explained what it was. I was just like, yeah, I'm definitely in. And then when we were talking about it, I was so blown away by the literature that you sent through. Mainly the I wouldn't call it a mind map, a soul map of the process.
Yeah.
And it was just like this very detailed, very articulate, very artistic, very beautiful looking drawn map of the process. And I was just like, all right, this is real deal stuff. Yeah, I'm in for this. So yeah, could you share like a little bit about the Phoenix Process and what's involved with that, please, bud?
Yeah, 100%, man. So yeah, again, deep bow of love and respect to Susanna and Yakov, who developed the Phoenix Process as a core fundamental practice within movement medicine. Forgive me because I've danced deeply with her many times, but the artist that created that is movement medicine apprentice as well, and she's phenomenal. Her capacity to translate that imagery is off the charts. I'll let you know who it is. It's really important to honor that as well. So essentially, the phoenix is at the center of the map of movement medicine. You know, without going into all the details, that we have a mandala, we have a map in movement medicine where you've got the 4 directions, you've got each of the elements. Yeah, you've got 5 roots to the tree, which are also 5 dimensions of being. You've got 9 branches, which we could call gateways to the soul. You know, you have body, heart, mind, past, present, future, fulfillment, interconnection, and realization. And so at the center, you've got this tree of life. Yeah, which in the tree of life, you also have yin, yang, divine, masculine, feminine. It kind of maps, it's a cosmology. Now, sitting in the tree at the center is the phoenix, you know, the mythical bird of transformation, right? And so the essence of Phoenix is recognizing that there's diamonds in the darkness, that there's gold buried. Yeah, that our greatest gifts are often in our wounds. Yeah, that there is light in the darkness, that there is a possibility of recapitulating our life stories and resurrecting the beauty and the medicine from those life stories, of releasing those aspects that no longer serve us, and to shine the light, to go into the ashes and to allow that kind of phoenix resurrection to come through. Now that sounds very mythological and poetic, and it is its essence. But to break it down in simple ways, you know, there's this sense that we all have different aspects of our psyche, all right, that have come into being to protect us. Okay, there's many different approaches to looking at these. You know, in some modalities, you talk about subpersonalities. In something like internal family systems, you talk about protective parts. You know, you could talk about loyal soldiers. In movement medicine, in the Phoenix process, we talk about understudies. So the understudy being like the one that is reading the script and stepping up in place of the main actor, the player. Yeah. So there's this sense that through certain experiences, which may be labeled traumatic, it's just life happening in many ways, that certain spasms happen in our psyche as well as in our body. Self-protective spasms is systemic ways of creating protection around places where we're vulnerable. They're survival mechanisms. Yeah. And so they manifest in terms of our posture, our shape, our way of being, our default emotional, our relationship with our voice, how we engage with one another. Is it safe to speak my truth and use my voice? How do I survive? And most of these understudies, these characters, these protective parts come into play often when we're very young. You know, they certainly develop over a lifetime. And the sense is that because there's a spasm, there's a contraction, there's a certain amount of life energy. You know, in shamanic terms, you talk about aspects of soul, hence soul retrieval. But in a very simple way, it's a life force, it's life energy. So if you imagine, you know, something contracts and creates a container, there's a limit to what can move within it. Yeah. So the more space there is, the more space there is for energy. Yeah. So we have ways of being about how we think, feel, and behave, yeah, in relation to ourselves, to others, to life, to God, the universe, that are determined by the stories that we're living our life by, you know. And most of those stories come into being through the conditioning of our circumstances. You know, certain key experiences. It may be traumatic experiences, through our experiences at school, in our family, in our particular culture, the time we live in, yeah, the experience of our ancestors, our heritage, our religion, politics, many, many different stories coming into being that shape us. Yeah. So most of those stories have enabled us to belong and to survive. Yeah. We're still alive. Yeah. I assume that anyone listening to this is still alive. So whatever stories have been in your life, most of them, many of them have enabled you at certain points to stay alive, to survive, to function. Yeah. To be included and accepted and to belong. But the interesting thing is that maybe some of those stories have outstayed their usefulness. Maybe they're not so relevant anymore. You know, maybe there's a possibility of rewriting those stories. Some of them may be super useful and really necessary. Yeah. Some of them may need a bit of fine tuning. Yeah. Others, it's like, wow, you know, can I thank and appreciate that loyal soldier, if you like, for all that he has done to protect me, but also update him that the war is over now. You know, that actually, if I speak my truth, I'm not going to be belted by my father. That wasn't my experience, incidentally. And, you know, and love and blessings to anyone that is their experience. But that kind of thing. So certain things, it's not safe for me to do something. It's better that I stay quiet, I stay small. You know, there's certain behaviors enable us to survive, to stay safe, to be included and protected. Yeah. That may well have been relevant when we were children, when we were teenagers, when we were young adults even, you know, but now as adults, maybe they're not so relevant. Maybe they're not so useful. So the Phoenix process is about initially shining the light on what stories are operating in our life. What stories do we tell about ourselves and others in the world? And to recognize how they're self-fulfilling prophecies. You know, we have what we call the dance of the understudy. And the dance of the understudy is a self-perpetuating, confirming loop. Yeah. So you have a story. From that story, we have a perception of ourselves. We have a perception of others in the world. The consequence of those perceptions are a set of feelings and emotions. Yeah. From that feeling state, we then have behavior that comes from that place. Yeah. Which has a predictable outcome, which invariably confirms the story. There, I told you, this shit always happens to me. Yeah. And so until we shine the light on it, we don't have the possibility to recognize that we're in that loop. Yeah. And then we can start to untangle it, and we can start to recognize that story and go through a process where we resource ourselves, where we call on the support, we call on the energy of earth to hold us, fire to give us the power and the energy to feel and express what we need to feel. You know, the waters within us and all around us to bring in cleansing, purification, to wash through the air, to open up our wings, our heart, our breath. Yeah. So that we can then essentially, it sounds a bit cosmic, but essentially time travel. So as a resourced embodied being right now, I can step into past experiences, not to re-traumatize myself, because I can step out at any point. I'm meeting it as an embodied adult dancer now, yeah, to feel what is emergent and is asking to be felt, to express what is asking to be expressed through movement, through sound, yeah, through emotion, yeah, and often things that couldn't be said or expressed at the time, you know, when these stories were initiated, yeah, to create a gestalt, to complete what was incomplete, to feel what perhaps was suppressed or repressed or dissociated from, to express what it wasn't safe to express at the time. Yeah. But now we can. And then to wash that through, to release it, to shake, to release the residual memories and echoes, the hormones, the chemicals in our system, yeah, that are embedded in our cells, to then open up space, to then open up our body, our heart, our mind, to call back life energy. You know, again, in shamanic terms, to call back soul, to call back that resourcing that perhaps couldn't stay or wasn't able to fully incarnate in the first place, especially if we were children, to call it back. And that is the energy, the resourcing that enables us to become more and more creative, to create new stories, life affirming stories, yeah, that are empowering for ourselves, that are empowering for others, that are gifting to life. Yeah, we have the resourcing, we have this new energy that has been locked up in our cells, in our body, in our psyche, yeah, coming back so that we can open up new pathways, yeah, new possibilities, so that we can recognize that at the core of our being, we are healers. We are ultimately whole. We are creative beings that have limitless potential for relationship, for creativity, for transformation. Yeah. And so hence the Phoenix, by visiting those old experiences and those old stories and those old ways of being, acknowledging them, recognizing them, blessing them, thanking those aspects of our psyche, those subpersonalities, understudies, loyal soldiers, protective parts, whatever you want to call them, to breathe, expand, and include them as part of our community, not to kill them or make them wrong or punish them, but to invite them to take the appropriate place in our circle, so that the emergent one at the center, the creative one, the dancer, the authentic, emergent, mature adult being is at the center of that community, that can call on the resources of those subs, those protective parts as and when necessary, but to essentially Phoenix resurrect. So by going into the ashes, to have a kind of a rebirth, a revelation, a recapitulation of the genius that we have access to, you know, the possibilities of consciousness and health and creativity, yeah, that we can have a degree of choice over the stories we tell. Yeah, you can't change the nuts and bolts of what happens in the future. You can't control what is happening in the wider field of life, just as the surfer can't control the oceans, you know, but we can change the stories we tell about it. We can change the stories we tell about the past. You know, we can change the stories we tell about the present. We can change the stories we tell about the future. And by choosing more life affirming stories to live our life by, then the possibility of fulfillment, of safety, of belonging, of love and creativity and awe and wonder is kind of limitless. You know, that's what I love about it. This kind of this fiery revelation, but that is deeply rooted in the body, in the earth, in practical day-to-day living. Yeah. That's the beauty of Phoenix for me, that it opens up portals of possibility where we can become more and more unapologetically who we are, and to cultivate the possibility that maybe we're already wholly healed and whole. And it's a case of finding our way back home. And from that place, respecting the path of all other beings as they find their way back home. Yeah. To a place of belonging, of love, of inclusion. I keep coming back to love. Love. Love is all you need. So, yeah, it's true.
Love heals all. Love heals all. That's amazing, mate. I cannot wait for this. Just hearing you speak it's like, you know, the green run when you get to your town and it's just like you get all the green traffic lights all the way home, and like this is kind of what it feels like as you're speaking. It's ticking so many boxes and lighting so many things up, and yeah, I really can't wait to get stuck in. And also, mate, I think we're going to start rounding up now, but I would love to do a part two at some point because it feels like we're only just scratching things right now. We're only just scratching things, and yeah,
Mm.
it's been an amazing time spending this time sharing this time with you, mate. I want to come to the last question, and uh,
Yeah.
directly ties into a lot of that which we've been speaking about, and there's a question I like to ask each new guest coming on, and yeah, it's Phoenix Vision is dedicated to creating a transformative vision of health for its listeners. So, what does transformation mean to you, and what would you like to see transform in the future?
Ah, transformation. Transformation. For me, transformation in many ways is the intersection between memory and imagination. Yeah. Where memory and imagination meet and creativity can emerge. It's almost like the meeting of yin and yang, of masculine and feminine, of it's creative life force energy. So transformation is recognizing that all experiences, yeah, however challenging and painful and dark at times they may be, and all the beautiful experiences as well, have the potential to be utilized as material for art. Yeah. And by art, I don't just mean the obvious art of making music, of paintings, of literature, of poetry, and the many other, forms of art. But it's a sense of we are all essentially creative beings. We are all essentially artistic beings. Yeah. And so transformation is really about expanding our palette of possibilities to find ways to make our actual life, our living, our relationships an art form, a ritual, a ceremony. Yeah. And so that anything has the potential for transformation. Yeah. Anything has the possibility to alchemize, from lead to gold, from concealment to revelation, from darkness to light, from suffering to satisfaction, however you want to play with it. So for me, really, that I would say is fundamental. It's transforming, it's changing shape, it's changing form, it's retelling of stories. It's about how do I make the material of life, how do I find a way to choose to take whatever life presents me, yeah, physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, narratively. How do I find ways to remember that I have a choice to be creative and artistic with this? Yeah. And it doesn't mean that there isn't pain. There is. It doesn't mean that there isn't anger. There is. It doesn't mean there isn't fear and sorrow and grief and suffering. They are part of the spectrum of being human. And if we accept that they're part of the spectrum of being human, then there's a possibility that we can choose to be creative with that material. And so for me, transformation is that of recognizing that everything has a possibility to be medicine. Everything has a possibility to be a poison as well, right? But everything has the possibility to be medicine. And so for me, that's the essence of transformation. It's about creative medicine, of receiving whatever Life is incredibly generous with giving us opportunities to grow. Yeah. And in my experience, most growth opportunities are rarely tied up with ribbons and, sprinkled with glitter. They often have a rub. Yeah. And it can often be excruciating. But by meeting that with enough humility and enough cultivation of our remembrance that we are creative beings, then all of those experiences can be alchemized and transformed in a way that ultimately leads to acceptance, to peace, to health, to love, whilst recognizing that that is also just a story. Ultimately, it's a great mystery. And also recognizing that in this physical incarnation, if we're lucky, this body will get old and die. Yeah, that's just a reality. That's non-negotiable. What's through that portal of death remains to be seen. What seems to be clear is right now, as far as I'm aware, we have this one precious life. There may be more beyond. I don't know, and I won't know till I get there. And even then, who knows? Yeah, but there is this one precious life. So transformation is about taking the opportunity and choosing to say yes to life, and to be able to catalyze and alchemize whatever material we find ourselves meeting in this life. Yeah. And it's a choice, and we don't have to choose that. But personally, it seems like a good story to me, and I would always choose that. And transformation can be cultivated. It can be generated through support, through guidance, through practice, through resourcing. And often transformation is grace given. It's something that's mysterious. Some of the most profound changes that I've experienced in my life and witnessed in others, I wouldn't know where to begin to explain what the ingredients were and what the methodology was that cultivated that particular moment for that particular person, for a shift to happen. There's a mysterious intelligence at work there, that I personally can't begin to comprehend what's happening there. So, transformation is mysterious, and we can cultivate the possibility of it being more likely to happen. And so maybe I'll park it there. That feels like a good point to pause and let it land in whatever way it needs to.
I'm inspired, mate. Thank you. That was really beautiful. Really beautiful. Yeah. Transform some things. Let's do it, man.
Yeah.
Keef, where can people find out more about you, your offerings? Do you have a website? Do you have any contact details at all?
Yeah, sure. So we're just in the process of rebuilding our website. So it is there. It's very basic holding page at the moment. So that's going to be really transforming over the next transforming. Yeah, there's going to be a transformation of our website in the coming months. It's awakening. Currently, it's awakeningthewild.co.uk. Awakeningthewild.co.uk. So yes, some of the pieces we've touched on are there, and there's many more are going to kind of land on that page. At the moment, in order to kind of book on to events, to kind of dive deeper, then people need to contact me directly. So a lot of the information's there. There's more information I can share. So I'm really happy if people go to the website, is the easiest way. It's got my email address, it's got my phone number. And so I'm more than happy to jump on. You probably guessed by now, I love talking. I'm also good at listening, believe it or not. But you've invited me to talk, so you let that particular beast out of its cage. So happy days. But yeah, more than happy for people to get in touch. I'm happy to jump on a call, have a chat, see what's going on. They can send me an email and I can keep them in the loop. So yeah, awakeningthewild.co.uk, come and play. It does what it says on the tin. It's about awakening. It's about wildness, awakening the wild one within you and being more unapologetically who you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, mate. I am hyped to get involved. I can't wait for November now. Like, this is going to be a beautiful, epic journey. I can feel it already. Already feels like the journey's begun, really. Actually, no, it's starting before November. We're starting in a couple of weeks, actually, aren't we? So,
Yeah.
yeah, looking forward to it, mate. So, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your deep insight and wisdom, and yeah. I mean, I think if anyone is listening to this, then they're going to be pretty keen to get involved as well. So, thank you, Keith.
Absolute pleasure, Jess. And I resonate. It feels like we're scratching the surface. So yeah, let's dive into more. I can feel a series coming on here, and I love to collaborate, and I get this sense of a mycelial network. Just as the fungi under the ground help with the interconnective communications between trees and life. This sense of reaching out and connecting the hearts and souls of inspiring beings, and through that process, lighting a few fires that rekindle the glowing embers and bring the flames of inspiration and transformation to individuals. Many lights coming on, and let's blaze together, brother. 100%. And anyone that's feeling the call, get in touch. I'm all over it. I'd love to meet you, and I'm sure I've got a lot to learn from you too.
Amazing. Thank you, brother. Much love.
Ush.
Ouch.
Ouch.